Hello and welcome to Mining Network. We're joined today by Rohit Savant, the VP of Research over at CPM Group. Rohit, welcome to the program.
Hi, thanks for having me.
So today we're talking about platinum. It's been a bit of a bumpy ride for the metal over the last 6 to 8 months. We saw a really nice bull market with prices reaching around the 1345 mark back in February. We've since seen a contraction down below the $1,000 mark, and it's really struggling to get past that market. It has been pushing it over the last week or so. To start off with, can you just give us a summary? What was the cause for that sort of short-term bull market that we had at the beginning of the year, and what's been happening since then to warrant the contraction that we've seen?
I think what you saw was at the end of 2020, you had a lot of optimism entering 2021. There was expectations that there would be some kind of resolution to COVID that would help economic growth, boost demand. You had a lot of fiscal and monetary stimulus. You had a really bad year for supply, platinum supply last year. So you had a combination of factors that were really positive for platinum prices. So you saw platinum prices shoot up on increased investor demand. And then as the year 2021 has unfolded, you've seen a supply kind of normalize from what you had last year. And then you have fabrication demand, which really stumbled. So you had a situation where you had the semiconductor issue, which has really hurt auto demand. And that's a major source of demand for platinum. So with that, stumbling at this point and supply normalizing, you started seeing the fundamentals kind of deteriorate, investors taking a step back, especially the shorter term investors who kind of got into these markets, with the expectations that we're heading into 2021, it's going to be a strong year for economics, and all those expectations were kind of dashed. So you've got basically these factors which are hurting prices. And then more recently, you've seen the Fed come in and talk about, stepping back a little bit from all of that emergency monetary policy that they put in place. So that's further hurting these markets. And so that's where we are at right now.
Just wanted to touch on the semiconductor issue. It's probably one of the largest talking points in the PGM space at the moment. Is there a line of sight out of this, or what's it looking like in terms of production capability and supply reaching demand anytime soon?
So in terms of semiconductors, we think that it would take the better half of next year for supply to catch up with demand. That's going to result in a lot of pent-up demand from especially the auto sector, which we think would be a big positive for the metal. But yeah, in terms of when we think supply would catch up with demand, I think that would be sometime at best in the second half of next year.
Okay. And in terms of the actual size of the platinum market, for those who haven't been following it very closely, what's the current size of platinum in terms of a market size, and also how's the supply and demand differences been over the last couple of years or so?
I would say that the platinum market's about 7 to 7.2 million ounces. And then you've been having on average, a surplus in the market of about 200,000 ounces. We expect this surplus to contract in the next couple of years, and we in fact project that the surplus would flip over to a deficit maybe in the medium term. So that's what we're looking at.
Okay. And in terms of EVs, obviously we are starting to see this theme of grow back greener, and there's already been emission targets and sort of electric vehicle targets in place from governments all around the world, which range from around 2030 to 2040 in general. When are you guys expecting to see a meaningful decline in demand for platinum because of this switch over to electric vehicles?
So we really don't see the EV market hurting PGM demand for at least another 10 to 12 years. At that point, you might start seeing, the negative or meaningful negative impact on PGM demand. You have a lot of factors which we think would, take that much time. So one is still the cost of these cars. They're still expensive. Then there's the infrastructure needed to kind of support a larger fleet of electric vehicles. And then there's another trend that you're seeing, which is, yes, you are seeing a shift from internal combustion engines towards more electrification, but it's not necessarily towards pure EVs. So pure EVs are bad for PGM demand, but you have hybrids, which sometimes use as much PGMs, sometimes maybe even a little bit more than what an internal combustion engine would use. And so, for example, last year you saw, the market share for EVs in general, and this would include pure electrics as well as hybrids. It rose to about 4.6% of passenger vehicle sales, but about 33% of that was hybrids. So it's not necessary that this move towards electrification is going to be immediately negative. It might even be supportive of PGM demand in the next few years.
Okay, that's interesting. It's a different angle. You generally hear, I mean, not from researchers, but you do generally hear in the market that that's a worry. So it's good to hear that's a while off at least. Moving on to another big talking point with platinum is producing green hydrogen. Can you talk to us about the relationship there and basically how much platinum is required to produce green hydrogen?
So platinum's essentially used in the green hydrogen process as a catalyst. It's really in the infancy stages right now. For it to kind of have any kind of meaningful impact on platinum demand, I think you will need a lot more government support, a lot more, for the prices to come down, for it to really be used. And when we talk about prices coming down for that technology, one of the main ways in which prices are brought down is by reducing the amount of precious metals that go into it. So for platinum to meaningfully benefit from green hydrogen in the future, you would have to see green hydrogen become a big enough source of energy, which it could. I'm not saying it may not or will not. So that would be the first step. And then the other question or the other point is how much platinum has been thrifted out in the process of making this green hydrogen process economical. It's a little early to say how exactly this would impact platinum. It could have a positive impact. The market is wide open in terms of how these technologies would develop over the next several years. We don't know for sure, which technology is going to take the forefront. Right now, it seems like, for example, in the vehicle market, you look at electrification and you think about battery electric as being what's going to lead the way. And right now, it is a major source of demand, but that may not be the case 5-10 years from now. So everything's up in the air in a way, in terms of where this will all land. So it could have a positive impact, but it is not entirely guaranteed that it will.
Yeah, and it sounds like it's still potentially a little while away yet anyway, until we see anything like that. I guess linking to that, obviously, you do need platinum in the fuel cells themselves if you are going to make hydrogen vehicles. I remember hearing a little while ago now at a conference that one of the ideas would be that for larger vehicles, so heavy goods vehicles and vehicles that are traveling very long distances, would realistically need to move more towards the fuel cell, and then those sort of inner city cars and those for everyday use would be more likely to be EVs. Right. Is that still really the main forecast? Is that what people are expecting in terms of how this sort of branch away from petrol and diesel is going to pan out?
We would start by saying the same thing that I said for green hydrogen, which is that with hydrogen fuel cell vehicles in general, it's in the extreme initial stages. It's not, we can't compare them with, say, battery electric, because even though battery electric is still a small market share, it's still ahead of where hydrogen is. It's more likely to be used in trucks and buses and long haul kind of vehicles. But again, it's not clear whether that's how it, if they can make it economical enough, it might percolate into passenger vehicles as well. A lot of government support needed here as well. A lot of technological improvements needed to make it economical. And yes, platinum is being used. And again, as with other technologies that are using platinum, there's a lot of focus on trying to figure out how to build these fuel cells without platinum. So you might actually end up having a fuel cell vehicle and a decent market share for fuel cells, without any platinum in it. That said, as of right now, the platinum plays an important role and it does improve efficiencies. So, we'll just have to see how this plays out in terms of what demand looks like from these sources.
Okay, so it sounds like it's still, like we were sort of talking about with the green hydrogen anyway, it's still way too early to really understand what the technology that's really going to be used for these things. So just to summarize as well, you were talking about that this supply scenario with platinum. Obviously, we've had a lot more supply than demand over the last few years, but you do see that turn into a deficit eventually. I'd assume in terms of a forward outlook, are you expecting prices to remain where they are, or are you expecting an increase in platinum prices moving forward?
So our medium-term outlook for platinum is pretty positive. We do think platinum prices will rise. They would and could break above the levels that we saw earlier this year. There's a lot of different factors we think that would be positive. So on the demand side, for example, just a really short-term factor that would be positive is all this pent-up demand for vehicles. So you had 2020 when vehicle sales were hit because of the pandemic. And then you have 2021 when it's being hit because of these semiconductors. And it doesn't look like it's going to get resolved anytime soon. So 2022 is going to again be a year with similar problems. So this is all going to lead to a lot of pent-up demand, which we think would be really positive for platinum fabrication demand end of next year, 2023 onwards. So that's more of the short-term positive. And then you also have other factors, which would have a more lasting impact on fabrication demand as well as prices. So one of them is, this move back towards using platinum in gasoline autocatalysts. And that could be an important, sustainable, lasting kind of factor that would be, positive for prices. You have tightening emission standards, of course, which has always been something that has supported platinum fabrication demand and prices. And then you have the use of platinum in applications where it can be substituted. So, for example, in the glass industry, the glass manufacturing, platinum is now so cheap that you do see an increased shift towards using more platinum versus rhodium in this glass manufacturing equipment. So this is on the fabrication demand side, the factors we think that would be positive for prices. And then you have supply side issues. So you have seen a normalization of supply this year from the levels that you had last year, which were really depressed. But going forward, our expectation for refined platinum supply is really for it to be kind of flat to slightly lower. So on the mine supply side, a lot of it comes out of South Africa. South Africa, unfortunately, has a lot of, the mining industry has a lot of problems in terms of labor, the cost of mining, and electricity. So that you have seen somewhat of a pullback in the amount of capital expenditure here in South Africa. And then you have the secondary supply, the scrap supply. So we think that the amount of platinum being recovered from autocatalysts over the next several years will be much lower than it's been historically because there was reduced amount of platinum being loaded in these catalysts. So you have a combination of flat to slightly lower refined supply, and then you have various fabrication demand fundamentals that we think would be positive, which explains that deficit we are forecasting and the higher prices we expect.
Rohit, it's been an absolute pleasure, and thank you for your time and for sharing your insights with us today.